Global Insight News.
Okay, so let's dive right in. Today we're looking at this pretty wild event that went down in the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, wild's a good word for it.
So you sent over this report from Sky News, and it's all about this crazy long speech, like over 17 hours, given by Senator Cory Booker, Democrat from New Jersey.
Right. And this wasn't, like a normal Senate speech. This was something else entirely. 17 hours. It's basically him taking over the Senate floor for a whole day.
The article says he started talking around 7 p.m. on Monday, March 31st, 2025. And I guess that was midnight UK time, since that's where Sky News is.
Yeah, makes sense they'd use their own time zone.
And right from the start, he says he's going to keep talking for as long as I am physically able. That's a pretty bold statement right there.
It is. It definitely signals that this is more than just, regular Senate business. This is a statement. It's a tactic.
And it's a tactic with a very specific purpose. He's quoted in the article as saying, "I rise tonight because I believe sincerely that our country is in crisis." And given everything else going on, it's pretty obvious he's talking about Trump's presidency.
Well, absolutely. This is 100% a direct response to Trump.
So for you today, we really want to unpack this whole thing. Like, what was Booker trying to achieve with this marathon speech? What's the historical context here? And what kind of impact did it have both right away and maybe even further down the line?
Sounds good.
Let's get into it.
Perfect. So let's start with the tactic itself. Booker straight up says he wants to disrupt the normal business of the United States Senate.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, we know this isn't just about introducing a bill or debating some policy. It's something more.
Yeah, it's definitely about disrupting things.
It's like a very public, very dramatic protest happening right there on the Senate floor. Mm-hmm. And the article even quotes him, explaining his thinking. He says, "These are not normal times in our nation, and they should not be treated as such in the United States Senate." He's basically saying that the political situation is so messed up that it demands this kind of extreme response.
I think that's a key point here. He's not just trying to stall or delay something. He's trying to make a statement about the state of things. And the fact that he's able to keep going for so long, like over 17 hours while standing the whole time, as the article says, that just shows how serious he is about this. It's a crazy level of commitment.
You've got to be pretty determined to pull something like that off. Physically and mentally.
Okay, so we've talked about the tactic. Now let's talk about the target. Because it's pretty clear who Booker's aiming the speech at.
Right. There's no ambiguity here. The Sky News article says point blank that he was speaking against U.S. President Donald Trump.
Yeah, and when you combine that with his opening statement about the country being in crisis, it's pretty obvious that Trump is the focus of this protest.
There's no way around it. It's a direct and very public rebuke of the president.
Now let's talk about the length of this speech, because it really is remarkable.
Yeah.
And the article actually gives some helpful historical context.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how it stacks up against other long speeches in the Senate.
So it went on for more than 17 hours, and it was still going when the article was published, which is pretty crazy. But the article also brings up these famous Senate filibusters.
Yeah, filibusters are basically when a senator just keeps talking and talking to try and block a vote or delay something.
Right, and the article specifically mentions Strom Thurmond, who holds the record for the longest filibuster ever. Like, he spoke for over 24 hours straight back in 1957 to try and block the Civil Rights Act.
That's a pretty infamous example. And then there was Ted Cruz in 2013. He spoke for over 21 hours to protest Obamacare.
So you can see that Booker's speech is definitely up there with some of the longest speeches in Senate history.
It's definitely in the same league.
But here's where it gets interesting. The article points out that Booker himself actually referenced Strom Thurmond's filibuster.
That's right. I remember that part.
But he didn't just mention it. He kind of pushed back against the idea that filibusters are the way to achieve lasting change. He said that civil rights weren't won just by talking on the Senate floor, but by people marched for it, sweat for it, and civil rights leader John Lewis bled for it.
Yeah, that's a key distinction he's making. It's almost like he's saying that while filibusters can be a way to grab attention and delay things, they're not enough on their own. You need sustained action and public pressure to really make a difference.
Exactly. So it makes you wonder if Booker was really trying to filibuster anything in the traditional sense. Like, was he actually aiming to block a specific vote, or was this more about something else entirely?
Yes, a good question. Was this more about raising awareness, and mobilizing people outside of the Senate?
It definitely seems that way, especially when you consider his comments about the civil rights movement. He's basically saying that real change requires more than just speeches. You need people to get involved and fight for what they believe in.
And I think that's a powerful message. It's not enough to just talk.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to put in the work.
Okay, so before we wrap up, I want to mention one more thing that the article points out, and that's the support that Booker got from his fellow Democrats.
Oh, yeah, that's an important detail.
The article says that other Democrat senators have joined Mr. Booker to ask questions so he can rest his voice, including Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer.
That's a pretty common tactic during filibusters.
Yeah.
It lets the speaker take a break without actually giving up the floor.
Right, and it also shows that there was some level of coordination and agreement among the Democrats about what Booker was doing.
It wasn't just a rogue action. It was a deliberate strategy.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's try to sum up the key takeaways here for you.
Yeah.
So first, we have Senator Booker's epic 17-hour speech. This was a huge public protest against Donald Trump and his presidency, and Booker was very clear that he saw this as a response to a national crisis.
Right, and second, the length of his speech is really significant. It puts it up there with some of the most famous filibusters in history, even though Booker himself seems to be suggesting that he wasn't just trying to filibuster in the traditional sense.
And third, it looks like Booker was aiming to do more than just delay a vote. He was trying to raise awareness and maybe even inspire people to get involved in the fight against Trump's policies. He even compared his actions to the struggle for civil rights, which is a pretty bold statement.
So you've got this really dramatic event, this 17-hour speech that highlights the huge political divide in the country. And it shows that some lawmakers are willing to go to extreme lengths to make their voices heard.
And it makes you think about the role of these kinds of protests in today's world. Like, can a single senator really make a difference by standing up and talking for hours on end?
Or is it just symbolic?
Yeah, and especially in this age of, 24/7 news and social media where everything moves so fast, does this kind of sustained attention-grabbing action actually have any lasting impact?
I think that's the question we all need to consider. Like, what is the power of these individual acts of political expression? Can they change minds? Can they shift the conversation? Or are they just temporary blips on the radar?
And I think Booker's speech really provides a fascinating case study here, because he's clearly trying to do more than just disrupt things. He's trying to start movement. He's trying to inspire people to get involved.
So it'll be interesting to see what the long-term effects of this are, if any. You know, did it actually change anything, or was it just a moment in time?
I guess only time will tell.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but it definitely leaves us with a lot to think about. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.